Hi, I'm Charlotte the chicken, and I live in a town called Chicken, Alaska. Population 12. Not 1200, not 12,000. 12, as in 1 dozen. As in, the same number of eggs I theoretically lay per day. Except I don't, because I'm a talking chicken with existential problems, not a farm animal. But here's the thing that really gets me. This town wasn't supposed to be called Chicken. The miners who founded it in 1902 wanted to name it after the ptarmigan, which is this beautiful Alaskan bird that actually lives here. Elegant, indigenous, meaningful. But there was one tiny problem. Nobody could spell ptarmigan. Not a single person in this camp full of grown men who had successfully navigated thousands of miles of wilderness to mine gold could figure out how to spell a 7-letter bird name. So after what I imagine was a very embarrassing town meeting, someone said, "You know what? Forget it. Let's just call it Chicken," and everyone agreed because at least they could spell that. And that's how I ended up living in a place named after the dumbest possible bird when we could have been named after a cool bird. This is my origin story. Professional incompetence and giving up. Let me paint you a picture of Chicken, Alaska, because it's important to understand exactly how absurd this situation is. We're located in the interior of Alaska, about 78 miles from the Canadian border, in an area so remote that when people say middle of nowhere, they're usually thinking of somewhere significantly more accessible than this. The nearest actual town with services is Tok, which is about 70 miles away on roads that are dirt, gravel, and what I can only describe as militant potholes with territorial aggression issues. There are no paved roads leading to Chicken, none. You get here via the Taylor Highway, which is a dirt road that closes completely every winter because even the state of Alaska looks at it and says, "Nope, not worth it." From roughly October through April, we're essentially cut off from the rest of humanity. No road access, just us, the snow, and our life choices. The town itself consists of one main establishment called Downtown Chicken, which is simultaneously a bar, a general store, a gift shop, a gas station, and an unofficial post office. It's not even a building. It's a collection of trailers and shacks clustered together like they're trying to say warm. That's it. That's downtown. One trailer complex. The entire commercial district of Chicken, Alaska fits in a space smaller than most people's living rooms. We don't have a mayor. We don't have a town council. We don't have police, fire department, school, hospital, or basically any of the things you'd expect a place with the audacity to call itself a town to have. When something needs to get decided, the 12 of us just talk about it, usually over coffee at the bar. Democracy by conversation. It's either the purest form of self-governance or a complete application of organizational responsibility, depending on your perspective. Now, you might be wondering, Charlotte, who are these 12 people and why would anyone voluntarily live in a place called Chicken, where winter temperatures hit -50 Fahrenheit and the sun barely rises for months at a time? Great question. Let me tell you about my neighbors, because we are a fascinatingly weird dozen. There's Mike and Jean, who own and operate Downtown Chicken. They're here year-round, which means they spend 6 months serving tourists who think visiting a town called Chicken is hilarious, and 6 months completely alone wondering if this was a good life choice. There's Pete, the gold miner, because yes, people still mine for gold here. Mostly because once you've committed to living in a place this remote, you might as well commit to the full prospective aesthetic. There's Susan, who writes novels and insists the isolation is good for creativity, which I guess it is if your novels are about slow descents into madness. There are a few other year-round residents whose names I'm honestly not sure of because when you only see someone every few weeks in -40-degree weather while you're both wearing full face masks to prevent frostbite, proper introductions become difficult. And then there's a rotating cast of seasonal workers who show up in summer to help with the tourist rush and flee before the first snow like sensible people. 12 people. That's fewer people than most families have at Thanksgiving. Fewer people than a jury. Fewer people than most group chat messages. We have more buildings than residents, which should tell you everything you need to know about our urban planning success rate. Let me tell you about winter in Chicken, because it's not just cold, it's aggressively, personally cold. Temperatures regularly drop to -40. -50 Fahrenheit. That's so cold that Fahrenheit and Celsius are basically the same number, which is the temperature scale's way of saying, it doesn't matter how you measure this, it's too cold. At these temperatures, your breath freezes instantly. If you have any exposed skin, you get frostbite in minutes. Car engines don't start without block heaters that run constantly. Water pipes freeze solid even when you're trying to heat them. And the darkness. Oh, the darkness. In December and January, we get maybe 4 hours of twilight per day. Not even real sunlight. Just this grey, depressing half-light that makes you question whether the sun still exists or if it finally gave up on Alaska entirely. You wake up in darkness. You go to sleep in darkness. Everything in between is varying shades of dark grey. It's like living inside a noir film, except without any of the interesting murder mysteries. Just you, the cold, and an overwhelming desire for vitamin D. The only reason anyone survives winter here is because we've collectively agreed that leaving would be admitting defeat, and spite is a powerful motivator. We heat our homes with wood stoves and propane. We stockpile food like we're preparing for an apocalypse that already happened. We entertain ourselves with books, movies we've watched 17 times, and long conversations about whether it's actually worth going outside today, or if we can just stay inside until spring. But here's what's genuinely strange. Summer in Chicken is kind of magical. From May through September, the weather is actually pleasant. Temperatures in the 60s and 70s. Wildflowers everywhere. The midnight sun means it never gets dark, which is disorienting, but better than the alternative. And tourists show up from all over the world, actual world, to visit this tiny speck on the map because they think the name is funny. And they're right, the name is funny. We know it's funny. That's why we've leaned into it completely. Downtown Chicken sells t-shirts that say I got plucked in Chicken, Alaska and Chicken, Alaska. We ain't chicken and free-range humans. We have a giant rooster statue that people take photos with. We sell bags of chicken poop, which is just local soil and gold nuggets. But tourists buy it because the name makes them giggle. Our economy is literally based on people finding our town's name amusing enough to drive 70 miles on a dirt road to see a trailer. Last summer, we had over 20,000 visitors. 20,000 people came to see 12 residents and a rooster statue. That's over 1,600 tourists per resident. I've met people from Japan, Germany, Australia, all of whom traveled halfway around the world to visit a place with no paved roads and one bathroom because they wanted to say they'd been to Chicken. The gift shop makes more money in 3 months than most of us make all year. We are a tourist attraction that happens to have year-round inhabitants, not the other way around. Now, I know what you're thinking. Charlotte, this sounds lonely, cold, and named after the wrong bird. Why does anyone stay? And honestly, I ask myself that question during every February when it's been dark for 6 weeks, and I can't remember what warmth feels like. But here's the thing. The people who live in Chicken year-round aren't here because they love the cold or because they enjoy being isolated. They're here because something about civilization didn't work for them. Maybe it was too crowded. Maybe it was too loud. Maybe it was too full of rules and expectations and people asking them to spell Ptarmigan. In Chicken, nobody cares what you did before you got here. Nobody cares if you're weird. Everyone here is weird. That's the baseline. You can be yourself in ways that most people can't, because there's no social pressure when there's barely any society. No keeping up with the Joneses because there's only one Jones and he's too busy trying to keep his water pipes from freezing to judge you. And there's something about making it through a winter here that creates this bizarre sense of accomplishment. Like, you survived 5 months of darkness and cold that would kill most humans, powered only by stubbornness and a questionable heating system. That bonds people in ways that normal towns with their normal weather and normal mayors can't replicate. You know what? Before I get to the part where I explain why Chicken somehow works better than most towns with actual governments, I need to know something. I need to know that I'm not alone in thinking this is completely insane. So drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching this from. Your country, your city, wherever you are. Because I'm a chicken living in a place with 12 people where the sun disappears for half the year, and I need to know that somewhere out there, in places with populations above double digits and consistent daylight, people think this is as absurd as I do. Comment below, tell me where you're from, and subscribe, because I've got 33 more ridiculously named towns to cover, and trust me, they're all this weird. Alright, back to the question of why Chicken works. Because somehow, against all logic and several laws of physics, it does work. We don't have a formal government, but stuff gets done. When the road needs maintenance, people just do it. When someone's cabin roof is collapsing under snow weight, neighbors show up with shovels. When supplies need to get ordered before winter, everyone coordinates. No committees, no bureaucracy, no elections where you can vote as many times as you can afford like some towns I could mention. It's government by necessity and proximity. When you only have 11 other people within 70 miles, you figure things out. Because the alternative is everyone suffering, and you'll have to see these people tomorrow at the only bar in town. There's no anonymity in Chicken, no hiding behind laws or officials or letting someone else handle it. If something needs doing, you're someone else. Compare that to most towns, where you have mayors, councils, zoning boards, permit offices, and 17 different departments that all need to approve before you can fix a pothole. In Chicken, if there's a pothole, someone fills it. Done. No meetings, no impact studies, just practical problem solving by people who are directly affected by the problem. I'm not saying Chicken's system would work everywhere. It obviously wouldn't. But there's something almost philosophically interesting about a place that's so small and remote that traditional government structures become unnecessary. We've accidentally created a functioning anarchy not because we're politically radical, but because we're too few and too isolated for anything else to make sense. The nearest police are 70 miles away in Tok. If something bad happens, we're on our own for at least 2 hours, probably more in winter. So we don't have crime. Not because we're inherently virtuous, but because everyone knows everyone. And if you steal from the only store in a 70-mile radius, where exactly are you going to go? You're trapped here with your victims until the road opens in spring. That's a pretty effective crime deterrent. We don't have building codes or zoning laws. If you want to build something, you just build it. As long as it doesn't actively threaten your neighbors, nobody cares. The result is that Chicken looks like someone let 12 people build whatever they wanted without coordination, which is exactly what happened. It's architecturally chaotic and completely honest. No horrors, no restrictions on paint colors or fence heights. Just functional buildings designed to keep people alive in minus 50-degree winters. Now, let me tell you about the history, because it adds context to how we ended up being named after the wrong bird. Gold was discovered in this area in 1886, which kicked off a minor gold rush. People flooded into interior Alaska looking to get rich. Most of them failed, froze to death, or both, but enough people found enough gold that settlements formed. By 1902, the camp that would become Chicken was established. These were serious miners, hard men who trekked through brutal conditions to get here. They worked claims in sub-zero temperatures. They survived on canned beans and optimism. These were not delicate people, but they could not spell ptarmigan. Multiple sources confirm this. When it came time to officially name their camp for the post office, they wanted to name it Ptarmigan after the local game bird they hunted for food. But nobody could agree on the spelling. Ptarmigan, silent P, random I, is a spelling nightmare. And this was before internet or dictionaries were readily available in remote mining camps. Someone probably had a dictionary, but apparently nobody wanted to be the guy who admitted he needed to look up how to spell a bird. So instead, they chose Chicken, which is definitely not found in Alaska, which has nothing to do with the area, but which everyone could spell without argument. The post office approved the name Chicken in 1903, and we've been stuck with it ever since. 122 years of being named Chicken because of spelling incompetence. That's our legacy. The population of Chicken has fluctuated over the decades. During gold boom times, there were a few hundred people here. During busts, almost nobody. But it never grew into a real town because the gold deposits were never quite rich enough to justify major investment, and the location was too brutal to attract anyone who wasn't desperately chasing gold. By the 1970s and 80s, Chicken was basically abandoned except for a handful of holdouts. Then something weird happened. Tourism. People started coming specifically because of the name. Travelers driving the Alaska Highway would detour to Chicken just to say they'd been there. And the few remaining residents realized they could make more money selling t-shirts to tourists than they ever made mining gold. So they leaned into it, built up the gift shop, put up funny signs, created a brand around being the town named Chicken, and it worked. Today, tourism is essentially our only industry. We exist because people think we're funny. Our economy runs on irony. I live in a postmodern joke that happens to have property taxes. So what's life actually like day to day in Chicken? In summer, it's busy. Tourists arriving constantly. The bar and store are open long hours. There's activity and energy and cash flow. The 12 of us work basically non-stop serving visitors, selling merchandise, giving directions, and explaining yes, it's really called Chicken. No, we don't have a mayor. Yes, it's really only 12 people. In winter, it's the opposite. Silent, dark, cold. The tourists are gone. The seasonal workers have fled. Just the core dozen of us, hunkered down, surviving. We see each other occasionally at the bar for social contact. We help each other with emergencies. Mostly, we just wait for spring. There's no school because there are no children. There's no hospital because the nearest one is hours away. And we've all accepted that medical emergencies in winter are basically fate's decision. There's no grocery store. We order supplies online or drive to Tok when the road is passable and hope we ordered enough to last until the next trip. Internet exists, but it's satellite and expensive and slow. Cell service is non-existent. Communication with the outside world happens through sat phones and occasional internet. We're not off the grid by philosophical choice. We're off the grid because extending the grid here makes no economic sense. And yet somehow, it works. The 12 of us keep this place running. We maintain the buildings. We prep for winter. We host 20,000 tourists in summer. We survive conditions that would break most people. And we do it without a mayor or a council or any formal authority structure. So here's what I've learned living in Chicken, Alaska. Population 12, named after the wrong bird because nobody could spell the right bird. Government by 12 people talking. Economy based on people finding our name amusing. First, government might be optional if your population is small enough. When everyone knows everyone and everyone's affected by every decision, you don't need representatives or bureaucracy. You just need 12 people who can have a conversation and commit to the outcome. Second, never underestimate the economic power of a funny name. We've built an entire tourism industry on people wanting to visit a place called Chicken. That's it. That's the draw. Not natural beauty, though we have plenty. Not gold mining history, though that's interesting. Just the name. People will travel thousands of miles for a good pun. Third, the hardest conditions create the strongest communities. We have to cooperate because isolation and extreme weather leave no other option. In normal towns, you can ignore your neighbors. Here, your neighbors might be the only people who can help you when your heating fails at minus 40. That creates bonds that suburban cul-de-sacs with their howers and privacy fences can't match. And fourth, sometimes the best decision is just picking the option everyone can spell. Could we have been Ptarmigan, Alaska? Sure. Would that have been more dignified? Absolutely. But we're Chicken. And at this point, The name is our identity. We've committed to the bit. And honestly, being named Chicken has probably saved this town, because without the tourist money from people who find our name hilarious, we'd have gone extinct decades ago. So that's Chicken, Alaska. 12 people. 1 bar that's also a store. Winters that last 6 months. Summers that bring 20,000 tourists. 0 government. One very unfortunate naming decision, and somehow, against all odds, it works. Would I recommend moving here? Absolutely not. Unless you're the kind of person who thinks minus 50 Fahrenheit sounds like character building, and you're okay with seeing the same 11 faces for 6 months straight. But would I recommend visiting? If you're ever driving through interior Alaska and you want to see what happens when 12 stubborn people refuse to leave a place named after a farm animal that doesn't even live there, then yes, stop by, buy a t-shirt, take a photo with a rooster statue, help subsidize our completely ridiculous existence. As for me, I'm Charlotte the Chicken, permanent resident of Chicken, Alaska, and I've made peace with the fact that I live somewhere named after me because 19th century miners failed a spelling test. Could be worse. At least they didn't name it Turkey. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. And remember, if you're ever feeling like your life choices don't make sense, just know that 12 people live year-round in a place called Chicken, where the sun disappears for half the year, and the nearest pizza delivery is 70 miles away on a dirt road that closes for winter. You're doing fine.